Cottonwood Circle was one of those immaculate suburban neighborhoods where nearly every lawn looked as though it was professionally groomed, and each home radiated pride of ownership. From the oak trees arching over the sidewalks to the symmetrical flower beds abutting the driveways, the development projected an image of serenity and order. Arched street lamps glowed at dusk, illuminating families walking dogs on leashes and children playing hopscotch by the curbs. Yet, beneath the tidy surface of this HOA-governed enclave, a quiet tension lurked. Some residents felt relaxed under the rules, happy that property values remained high. Others chafed at the smallest citations for things like an out-of-place trash bin or a basketball hoop left in sight. A handful of neighbors had grown weary of the association's overbearing style, but they rarely mustered the energy to challenge it. After all, most wanted to avoid conflict. Cottonwood Circle's HOA board boasted half a dozen members, some more diplomatic than others. They managed budgets for landscaping, set guidelines for holiday decorations, and mediated the occasional dispute about fence heights or driveway expansions. Many on the board tried to keep a balanced approach. But one figure among them, Teresa Blankenship, known behind her back as Karen, wielded her authority with alarming zeal. Teresa Blankenship was in her late 40s, with a neat coif of coppery hair that curled precisely above her shoulders. She had moved to Cottonwood Circle a few years earlier, quickly joining the HOA with a claim of wanting to preserve our beautiful community. She insisted on being addressed by her full name in formal settings, but outside of them, neighbors had begun referring to her behind closed doors as Karen, for reasons that would soon become obvious. Karen cultivated an image of sophistication, pastel cardigans, pressed slacks, and a posture that implied she was perpetually on the verge of giving orders. She walked the neighborhood each morning with a notepad in one hand and her cell phone in the other, supposedly monitoring compliance. It was widely believed that she took genuine pleasure in spotting even trivial infractions. Overgrown shrubs, unapproved doormats, small holiday wreaths kept up too long. None escaped her scrutiny. Where the HOA president and treasurer leaned toward compromise, Karen appeared to relish confrontation. She would not just note a minor violation. She would demand immediate correction, occasionally threatening fines or even legal action if a homeowner didn't comply. Most found her overbearing. Others believed she was necessary to maintain standards. Either way, her power in the association gave her a potent platform to meddle. Still, few expected just how far her meddling could go, until she took the extraordinary step of calling 911 over a single, tiny birthday candle. That decision would ripple through Cottonwood Circle, testing the limits of neighborly tolerance and forever altering Karen's reputation. For the first year or two, Karen's presence in the HOA was mostly a nuisance to those who disliked excessive regulation. She'd email stern reminders about properly coiling garden hoses or removing Christmas lights exactly by January 2nd. Occasionally, she'd show up at neighbors' doorsteps without warning, clipboard in hand, to discuss an urgent matter. Many rolled their eyes after she left, venting privately to friends or family about her officiousness. But behind her rigid facade lay a fervent desire for control. Some speculated that Karen felt overshadowed in her personal life. Perhaps she was once in a difficult marriage, or her career had stalled. By micromanaging everything in Cottonwood Circle, she found purpose, even if it made her disliked. Simmering tensions often revolved around families with young kids. Karen disliked the extra noise, chalk drawings on sidewalks, or scooters leaning against fences. She had repeatedly complained about fire hazards anytime someone grilled a bit too close to the house, demanding they adhere strictly to the HOA's designated barbecue zone. The board usually placated her by sending mild reminders to the owners in question, but that only encouraged her sense of authority. One mild spring day, neighbors noticed Karen had begun fixating on any open flame. She wrote lengthy posts on the community's private forum about potential arson hazards, linking to sensational articles about house fires started by carelessness. Most scrolled past, viewing it as her typical dramatization. But they had no inkling that this preoccupation with fire safety would soon escalate, culminating in one outlandish emergency call. Brianna and Dominic Torres had lived in Cottonwood Circle for 6 years, raising their small daughter, Olivia, in a cozy, light blue house near the cul-de-sac. Olivia, a bright-eyed toddler, was turning 4 that weekend. With extended family scattered across the country, Brianna and Dominic decided to keep celebrations low-key, just a simple cupcake with a candle, a few presents, and maybe a visit from the grandparents who lived an hour away. They'd throw a bigger party the following month, once more relatives could visit. On the day of Olivia's actual birthday, a Saturday afternoon, Brianna set up a small table in the front yard under the shade of an oak tree. She placed a pink frosted cupcake with a single, slender candle in the center. Olivia wore a tiny tiara and giggled in excitement. Dominic readied his camera to catch that classic moment when a child tries to blow out the candle. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and neighbors passing by on the sidewalk offered cheerful waves, some wishing Olivia a happy birthday. The scene was idyllic, a beaming child, proud parents, and the faint scent of frosting in the warm spring air. Little did they know that Karen was about to interpret this innocent candle as a dire threat to the neighborhood. Karen's vantage point from her living room window provided a partial view of the Torres' front yard. She noticed the pink decorations, the small table, and the flicker of a flame. Her antenna went up at once. A flame? Outdoors? She told herself this was a safety hazard that violated some clause in the HOA rules about open flames near structures. Never mind that it was merely a birthday candle, and the house was set back from the yard. She watched as Brianna lit the candle, and Olivia squealed in delight. Karen frowned, imagining that the child or wind might cause the flame to topple onto dry grass, ignite some kind of brush fire, or spread to the house. Her mind raced with doomsday scenarios. She had read an article about an entire row of townhomes going up in flames from a single spark. To her, a child's candle was practically a blowtorch. In another neighbor's hands, this might have ended with a polite suggestion, like, be sure to keep water handy. But for Karen, it was an opportunity to demonstrate her unwavering commitment to protecting the community. She considered going over to scold them, but then realized that she might have more impact by calling for official help, proving how irresponsible the Torreses were. In a heartbeat, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. The operator's calm voice asked for details. Karen breathlessly described a dangerous open flame near a house, possibly an arson situation, emphasizing children were involved. She insisted the fire department come immediately to avert a disaster. The operator, alarmed by the urgency in her voice, dispatched a unit, instructing Karen to stand by. Having done her duty, so she believed, Karen peered again out the window. The child was blowing out the candle, parents clapping happily. The candle's flame was snuffed in seconds. She assumed the fire department would see the lingering risk, or at least lecture the family. She never suspected how her call would backfire, or that the entire neighborhood would soon unite against her over what was about to unfold. Meanwhile, Brianna and Dominic had no clue that Karen was orchestrating a panic. Olivia, tiny lungs puffed out, had successfully extinguished her birthday candle. A little swirl of smoke rose from the wick, and Dominic snapped photos while Brianna led the obligatory happy birthday tune. The toddler giggled, jabbing her finger into the pink frosting, as kids often do. A few minutes later, the distant siren of a fire truck broke the tranquility. The noise grew louder, drawing the attention of neighbors, who wandered out onto their porches or yards to see what was happening. Confusion rippled through the street as the bright red engine appeared, lights flashing, heading straight toward the Torres' house. Firefighters hopped out, scanning for signs of smoke or flames. Brianna's eyes went wide with alarm. Dominic set down the camera, stepping forward to meet the firefighters. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Did someone report a fire?" The fire captain, a sturdy man with decades of experience, replied, "We received a call about a possible arson or significant open flame. Are you the homeowner?" Dominic nodded, baffled. "Yes, but we're not. Arson." He gestured to the remains of the tiny candle stump now lying on a plate beside the half-eaten cupcake. "We just had a birthday candle for my daughter's party." The firefighter peered at the candle, the child's grin, and the half-melted wax. After a beat of stunned silence, he shot Dominic a disbelieving look. "You're kidding? That's it." By that point, neighbors began converging, including an elderly couple, a teen on a skateboard, and a woman walking her dog. Whispers spread. "Who called the fire department? What's going on?" An onlooker pointed out Karen's figure half hidden behind her curtains. "Some guessed she was behind this bizarre call." While the firefighters realized this was a false alarm, they had to run through protocol. They asked a few more questions, took note of no actual fire hazard, then tried to reassure the shaken parents. Olivia, clueless about the commotion, kept happily munching her cupcake. Brianna, though, looked pale and embarrassed, as if they had done something wrong. Inside her house, Karen lurked near the window, heart pounding from the excitement. She had expected a bigger spectacle, maybe some stern words from the firefighters. But she began to sense that the call might be viewed as an overreaction. Indeed, the next wave of fallout would confirm that in spades. When the fire captain returned to the engine, he informed the dispatcher that the situation was just a child's birthday candle, no danger present. The dispatcher, evidently used to false alarms, sighed but noted it in the logs. With no further reason to remain, the firefighters prepared to leave, albeit with some perplexed glances around the street. More neighbors had gathered, including some who recognized that Karen, the HOA busybody, was likely behind the fiasco. A small crowd formed around the fire engine. One firefighter good-naturedly took the opportunity to show the kids some gear, letting them marvel at the shiny truck. This gave the unexpected interruption a silver lining. Several children in the neighborhood squealed in delight, forgetting whatever fear they had, excited to see real firefighters up close. Meanwhile, Dominic and Brianna, though relieved there was no real emergency, felt mortified that their quiet family moment had been turned into a public scene. As they offered the crew sincere apologies for the wasted trip, the captain shrugged and said, "Happens sometimes. People get nervous. Just glad no one's hurt." It was a gentle refrain, but the meaning was clear. This call had been unnecessary. Turning to leave, the fire department gave a friendly wave to onlookers. The engine rumbled away, sirens kept off. The neighbors, still in a state of mild disbelief, began speculating about how or why someone would call 911 over a tiny candle. The name, Karen, quickly circulated. Some shook their heads, others fumed about the wasted resources. Brianna, hugging Olivia, felt a rising sense of anger that her daughter's simple birthday moment had been so rudely interrupted. That anger would soon take shape in collective outrage, culminating in a surprising plan to transform Karen's nonsense into something beneficial. As the crowd dispersed, neighbors approached the Torres family with sympathetic words. A friend from 2 doors down, Maria, muttered, "I'd bet my mortgage Karen's behind this. She's always freaking out about the smallest things." Another neighbor, Mr. Johnson, an older gentleman, shook his head. "Calling 911 for a candle is plain ridiculous. I hope she gets fined for a false report." Brianna, still trembling, carried Olivia inside, leaving Dominic to tidy up the yard. The half-eaten cupcake and the extinguished candle now felt tainted by the memory of wailing sirens. She tried to steady herself. She didn't want to ruin her daughter's special day. But the thought that someone could label them arsonists for lighting a birthday candle unsettled her deeply. Within hours, talk of the incident spread across Cottonwood Circle's community forum. People posted in disbelief. Is it true someone called the fire department for a single cupcake candle? Others confirmed the sight of the truck arriving and leaving. Many pointed out how the 911 system was meant for real emergencies, not petty complaints. The forum lit up with condemnation for whoever made the call. While Karen's name was not publicly confirmed at first, it wasn't long before people deduced the likely culprit. She was infamous for taking HOA rules to extremes. Karen, reading the flurry of posts, felt her gut twist. She typed a defensive message. "We must remain vigilant about open flames. House fires start from tiny sparks. The presence of a child doesn't negate the danger. Our community deserves safety." The reaction was swift and negative, with neighbors piling on, calling her paranoid or worse. If she thought she could spin this as a justified cause, she soon realized the majority found her actions outrageous. Beneath the public scorn lay a simmering desire among neighbors to do something more tangible. The question was how best to respond. Would there be an HOA hearing, a petition to remove Karen, or some direct action? As it turned out, the solution that emerged was far more positive, and ironically tied to the very theme of fire safety that Karen had so grossly distorted. That same evening, the HOA board convened an impromptu meeting in a neighbor's driveway. Just an informal gathering to discuss the meltdown. The board's president, a measured man named Vincent Price, not related to the famous actor, expressed dismay. "A single candle is not a code violation," he said. "We cannot have members calling emergency services at every trivial turn. This is a serious misuse of 911. Another board member, Elisa Tang, who oversaw social events, chimed in, "Karen's been out of line before, but this goes beyond nuisance. We can't have the community policing each other to the point of absurdity." While Karen was absent from this meeting, likely by design, her actions hung over them like a storm cloud. A few members wanted immediate sanctions against her, but the bylaws required a formal process. Meanwhile, the board recognized the widespread frustration among residents, especially families with young children who often used small backyard fire pits, permitted under certain guidelines, or had candles for birthdays. They worried that anyone might fear Karen calling the authorities over everyday occurrences. Vincent proposed a measured approach, an official HOA statement clarifying that normal, safe household flames, like a single candle, did not violate any rule or necessitate emergency response. He also suggested that if a homeowner felt harassed, they could file a complaint with the board. Despite these steps, the public outcry showed no sign of abating. Many demanded a more robust stand, feeling that mere statements or internal procedures weren't enough. As they mulled it over, Elisa recalled that the local fire station often hosted educational demos for children. She raised the possibility of turning this fiasco into an educational community event, something that might quell fears about fire hazards while showcasing real safety tips. The rest of the board found the notion appealing. If done right, it could reassert a sense of unity and positivity in the face of Karen's alarmism. In the days after the false alarm, parents across Cottonwood Circle banded together, outraged that a child's birthday celebration could attract such unwarranted drama. A mom's group that usually coordinated playdates turned to discussing how to shield their kids from intrusive neighbors. Another father wrote a pointed post on the forum, "My 2-year-old loves to blow out candles. Do we risk an ambulance next time? Enough is enough." Brianna and Dominic found themselves at the center of a wave of sympathy. Neighbors dropped by with small gifts for Olivia, plush toys, coloring books, or belated birthday cards to make up for the disrupted day. Some offered words of comfort, "We're with you," or "Don't let that busybody ruin your celebrations." The couple felt a bittersweet gratitude at the community's warmth, tempered by lingering frustration. Encouraged by the support, Brianna decided to speak at the upcoming official HOA meeting. She wanted to share how humiliating and frightening the incident was, that the memory of her child's simple birthday now included a 911 response. She hoped the board would impose stricter rules on the misuse of emergency services for trivial complaints. In parallel, a group of mothers approached the local fire station with the idea of hosting a fire safety and fun day. The station's community outreach coordinator, Captain Renfro, responded enthusiastically. He explained that they loved teaching children about fire prevention, demonstrating gear, letting kids see the fire engine, and explaining smoke detectors and escape plans. The moms pitched the idea of combining it with a belated group birthday celebration for any kids with spring birthdays, turning the negative fiasco into something uplifting. Spurred by these discussions, the HOA board saw an opportunity. If the neighborhood wanted to rally around fire safety, they could sponsor a block party featuring the fire department's educational demo. They'd highlight that real fire hazards were things like unattended grills or overloaded power strips, not a single candle. The board believed this event would reaffirm the association's stance on balanced safety concerns. Vincent and Elisa worked with Captain Renfro to pick a date a few weekends away. They planned to block off a portion of the main street, set up tables for potluck dishes, and invite families to bring lawn chairs or blankets. The firefighters would park an engine for kids to explore, do a short talk about safety tips, and maybe even give out plastic helmets or coloring books. They'd cap it off with cupcakes, complete with candles if parents chose, symbolically showing that not all fire is an arson threat. Word spread quickly across Cottonwood Circle that this fire safety and family fun day would double as a communal birthday celebration for kids, especially Olivia. The date chosen happened to align with the birthdays of 2 other children in the neighborhood, fueling excitement. Flyers popped up on mail kiosks. The HOA newsletter teased, "Come learn real tips from the pros and celebrate our youngest residents with safe, Fun treats. Karen's reaction was decidedly frosty. She posted on the forum that turning a near disaster into a party spectacle trivialized the seriousness of fire risk. But her complaints no longer held sway. People responded by pointing out that no near disaster had existed, only her overblown call. One resident quipped, "We're more likely to drown in our cereal than burn from a birthday candle. Let's enjoy the day." Karen fumed, powerless as the entire neighborhood rallied behind the event. In the aftermath of the candle fiasco, Karen discovered her once formidable presence in Cottonwood's circle had eroded. Fewer people took her scolding seriously. When she tried to issue a violation notice about a neighbor's tall grass, the neighbor reported her to the board for harassment. Previously, the board might have supported her. Now, with public sentiment heavily against her, they simply dismissed the complaint as minor. At community gatherings or chance encounters on the sidewalk, neighbors gave Karen polite but curt nods, quickly moving on to avoid extended conversation. Some shot her disapproving glares, recalling how her false 911 call wasted emergency services and upset a child's birthday. Karen tried to defend herself in private chats, claiming she had legitimate safety concerns, but mostly met silence or exasperation. The sense that she was an isolated figure in a community that had grown tired of her meddling was undeniable. Occasionally, Karen lurked on the community forum, reading the excited posts about the upcoming fire safety and family fun day. A pang of resentment flickered within her. She still believed the open flame was a real hazard. Yet seeing neighbors unify in celebration left her feeling powerless, overshadowed by their camaraderie. Some nights, she contemplated whether she should move out of Cottonwood Circle entirely. Her dream of controlling a well-ordered neighborhood had devolved into personal ostracism. Still, she clung to a shred of defiance, telling herself that the event might fail or that the fire department would at least back her stance. She never anticipated just how robustly the firefighters would reaffirm that everyday caution suffices, and that a single candle is not a reason to panic. As the chosen weekend approached, the neighborhood buzzed with preparations. Families volunteered to bring potluck dishes, from baked beans to fruit trays and homemade cookies. Someone arranged a big cooler of lemonade and water bottles. Another resident, who happened to be a DJ in his spare time, offered to set up a small sound system for background music. Kids made colorful signs welcoming the firefighters, some reading, "Thank you for keeping us safe," or "We love firefighters." Brianna and Dominic felt touched by how the event had become a communal gesture of solidarity, all sparked by the fiasco over Olivia's birthday candle. They offered to bake a large sheet cake for the day, complete with a giant frosted candle drawn on top, ironically referencing the very symbol that caused the controversy. The plan included letting each child with a recent birthday blow out a real, but carefully tended candle on the cake, supervised, of course. Vincent, the HOA president, coordinated with local law enforcement to approve blocking off half of Cottonwood Circle's main road for a few hours. The official permit was granted, so cars would be redirected and neighbors could safely gather in the street. By sunrise on the event day, folding tables and chairs were set out, balloons bobbed in the breeze, and a sense of anticipation filled the air. Captain Renfro confirmed that his crew would arrive midday for an hour-long presentation, followed by a Q&A session. Throughout it all, Karen kept quiet. Some wondered if she'd try to sabotage the event. A rumor circulated that she might call the police or the fire department again, complaining about unauthorized street closure. But the board had the permit. Others believe she'd simply hide inside, ignoring the festivities. One thing was certain. The neighborhood had collectively decided to seize the fiasco and transform it into something positive. A bright Saturday morning dawned. By 10 o'clock, families were milling around the blocked-off portion of Cottonwood Circle, sampling potluck dishes. A playlist of upbeat tunes wafted through the air. Children scampered about with chalk, drawing pictures on the asphalt, flowers, smiley faces, and yes, candles. Some adults chatted in groups, wearing broad sun hats or baseball caps to shield themselves from the warm spring sun. Shortly after noon, the red fire engine rolled in, greeted by cheers and applause. Captain Renfro and 3 other firefighters hopped out, smiling at the enthusiastic reception. They set up a demonstration area, placing cones on the asphalt. The children gathered eagerly, many holding parents' hands. Renfro started by thanking everyone for the invitation and praising the community for wanting to learn about real fire safety. He showed them the gear firefighters wear, from heavy jackets to oxygen tanks, explaining how they respond to emergencies. Then, in a gentle tone, he emphasized that everyday caution, like blowing out candles, not leaving stoves unattended, and checking smoke detectors, prevents most house fires. He invited a few kids to try on small gear or hold a fire hose with adult supervision. Laughter rose as water sprayed across the street, delighting the onlookers. During the talk, Renfro made it clear that small supervised flames, like birthday candles, were not emergencies in themselves. "We want folks to celebrate safely," he said with a smile, referencing birthday parties. "A candle on a cupcake isn't a crisis as long as a responsible adult is there. That's the difference between a simple, everyday moment and a 911 call." The crowd chuckled, many throwing knowing glances at each other. Unsurprisingly, Karen was nowhere in sight. Some speculated she might be peering through her curtains, fuming at the jovial spectacle. The firefighters' statements carried weight. By acknowledging the candle fiasco in a tactful manner, they effectively discredited Karen's alarmist stance. Everyone cheered the crew, grateful for a real perspective on what truly constitutes a fire hazard. From inside her house, Karen glowered at the laughter and music echoing down the street. She saw the fire engine parked, children climbing around happily, neighbors who once regarded her with forced civility now beaming with genuine joy. In her mind, they were mocking her legitimate concerns. She told herself they didn't understand how quickly a small flame could lead to tragedy. Yet, deep down, she must have sensed that her response had been out of proportion. She considered marching out to confront the crowd or at least make a statement. But a flicker of self-preservation kicked in. The entire community was in a celebratory, almost defiant mood. Confronting them would only incite more backlash. So she stayed hidden, occasionally peeking from a side window, feeling isolated. A pang of regret, or perhaps bitterness, gnawed at her. The block party was a roaring success, precisely because it was a communal stand against the fear she had stoked. Mid-afternoon, the joyous event wound down. Children who had recent birthdays, including Olivia, gathered around the giant sheet cake. Captain Renfro stood by, nodding approval, as each child took a turn blowing out a small row of candles lit just for them. Parents smiled, cameras flashed. The demonstration turned whimsical, controlled, safe, and undeniably joyous. No accidents or arsons, just normal neighborhood life. In that moment, Karen's alarm call felt almost absurd in retrospect. When the last slice of cake had been served, the firefighters packed up their gear, and the DJ's music faded. Families lingered in the street, savoring the camaraderie. Many expressed relief that, in the wake of Karen's overreach, they had found a way to unify around something positive. Dominic and Brianna, especially, beamed with gratitude that their daughter's overshadowed birthday had blossomed into a bigger, happier event, shared by the entire neighborhood. They vowed to uphold that spirit of resilience moving forward. Later that evening, the HOA board posted an official message on the forum, thanking the fire station and praising the community for turning a misunderstanding into an opportunity for education and bonding. While they didn't explicitly name Karen, they did reaffirm that emergency services should be reserved for genuine emergencies and that neighbors should handle minor concerns politely before escalating. Karen's standing in Cottonwood Circle never truly recovered. She remained on the board for a few more months, but her influence waned significantly. Some quietly proposed a recall. Others believed she might quietly step down or move away. In the meantime, she no longer patrolled the streets with the same vigor, presumably aware that her neighbors saw her calls as reckless. Months passed, and the memory of the candle fiasco softened. But the spirit of unity sparked by that overblown 911 call endured. Parents felt more comfortable hosting casual get-togethers or letting their kids play with sidewalk chalk. The sense that one small flame could cause a conflagration, at least in Karen's mind, became something of a neighborhood joke, a cautionary reminder of how rules and vigilance can be twisted by the wrong attitude. In the end, the fiasco ironically benefited Cottonwood Circle. The block party became an annual tradition. Each spring, they invited the fire department back for a demonstration, culminating in a mini birthday celebration for all kids with birthdays in the spring season. The tradition served as a testament that even from petty drama, a community can forge stronger bonds. And as for Karen, her shrill cry of "Arson in progress" became a cautionary tale, proof that good neighbors typically solve small issues with neighborly conversation, not emergency calls. Cottonwood Circle remained a place of carefully mowed lawns and neat flower beds, but also a place where a single birthday candle, far from igniting panic, now symbolized resilience, unity, and the power of coming together to celebrate life's simple joys.